Hello everyone, today I'm working on this GP38-2 and that is a lifelike or Walters unit. This little guy did not auction well because the handrails are missing, and also it's got a pretty poor paint job, but I think it's worth saving, so I'm going to work on it. The previous owner actually put a lot of nice detail on it. He added these extra handrails, and in the back too. This is actually really spectacular what he's done in the back. The extra handrails, grab irons here. There's sunshades that he added. So a lot of nice detail parts, and it's got the bell that I like. It's got the little bell right here that I just happen to like. So that's a detail that I like from the factory. And so I have to replace the handrails, but also I have to repaint it. Now I'm going to use one of the other locomotives as a donor. I've got an extra shell. This is a good unit. It's a split frame. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the shell in the stripper for maybe a day, just to see if I can get some of this paint off the windows. That would be nice. So I'll get to work on that. On these units, the dynamic brake can come off, and then you could put a non-dynamic brake if you want. So I'm going to see what I use for a stripper. I use brake fluid. So I'll dip it in there for a day and see what comes out. So I was able to get the paint off most of it, but more importantly, especially for the windows. So these will look good. Now I'm going to paint this, and then I can bring it back and we'll put some decals on it. Also, before I paint it, I have a bunch of donor shells for my handrails. So for example, this is an Atlas GP38 handrail. I had to re-drill all the holes, so I'm going to work on that before I paint it. So before painting, I enlarge all my holes for my Atlas handrails for the side and for the front and the back. I cheated a little bit, I just glued them on. So now I'm ready to paint. So I let this dry for a day. Looks much better now. And the front and back handrails, I had to cheat a little bit. I had to glue them on there. But all the extra details that the guy did are still there. And my bell that I like, it's there again. So now I'm ready to put on my decals. And I have a choice for my decals. I could go for Pennsylvania Railroad. I could go for Penn Central, but I want to have a little bit of fun with this. I'm going to paint it for a Conrail patch. What happened at the beginning of Conrail is they would paint over black with the Penn Central logos and just put CR, and they would keep the original engine number. That didn't change. So I'm going to get to work on that. So I use micro scale decals. This is a leftover sheet I had. The Conrail rolling stock. It's really good to get. I get all my CR from this. And so I painted a couple of box cars. And I've got a coil car that I painted with this. And you can do cabooses, and right now I'm doing an engine with this. And for the road numbers, I'm using my leftover Penn Central stuff. So I'm going to get to work on the decal. So end scale, you're going to get some very small decals. I like to just slide them in place with my toothpick. So I'll finish this off camera. Now with the decals, it really changes everything. Now I haven't put my windows back in because I'm going to put some dull coat. So while my shell is drying, I'm gonna work on my drive. It actually looks pretty good. But what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna clean the wheels and maybe lubricate the worm gears a little bit, and that should be good. So I'm gonna start with the 2 screws. This is very similar to an Atlas GP38 frame. It's a split frame and they run pretty good, I'll tell you. Although I find that instead of innovating, they just copied what the other guys were doing. There's probably still room for improvement for N-scale engines. Also, while you remove these, try to retain the order at which they come out. This will help you have less noise. So yeah, it's just a split frame. I took the gas tank off to clean it before. This is the light shield. Helps you to have light only on the light rather than through the windows. So I'm gonna get the screws out so I don't lose them. And I'll split this off very slowly, very gently, just to make sure not to lose anything. And there you have it. Everything looks great. So I'm just gonna add maybe a drop of oil. And then I'll clean the wheels. Just a drop is all you need. And that should be good. So I test this every step of the way to make sure there's no interference or noise. Sounds pretty good. I'm gonna test the other way. That's what I like. So the wheels, everything feels pretty good. It seems to be a relatively pretty clean. So I'm just going to clean them with my rag. That would probably be enough. They feel like they have good lubrication from the factory. This engine, in fact, I would say it's factory fresh, or it's in very good shape anyhow, except for the shell, which was a mess. But I'm doing this while my dull coat dries. It turned out very well. So I'll show you some close-ups of that. Yeah, I don't even have to clean this, it's great. There's one little grain of dust here, and that's it. So you don't really have to spend all day cleaning that. It's already good. So I just cleaned my wheels with my rag, like as I always do. It's a good technique. Really works out well for me, for what I want. Gonna refocus that for you. There. Squeaky clean. And then once you're happy with everything, just test it with your finger to make sure there's no resistance or noise. So now I'm gonna put everything back together. So remember the order in which they came out, very important. As you put it back together, take the time to check that everything's aligned properly. You want those contact strips to touch a little bit, but you don't need a lot of pressure for them to work properly. They just need to touch just barely enough to make them work together. There, that feels pretty good. And then the back one. And then I'm going to test it on the track to make sure that it's running properly before I put my shell back on. That way if I have to get back in there, I don't have to take everything off again. There. Now that looks much better. Runs super nice. So this is how the shell turned out with the dull coat and the decals. That looks very cool. Now I have to put my windows back in. I have to put my handrails back on, and also it needs couplers. I'm going to do the couplers now because I think people are interested in that. That takes a little bit of skill to do it. But I have these leftover couplers from another engine. So I'm gonna see if they fit in there. Though, because I like fixing trains so much, I always keep a bunch of parts around. In the best world, this would have had couplers already from the factory. But the previous owner probably used them up for something else. Probably kept the good shell and sold the drive only with the bad shell. Have to put a little screw in there to hold it together. That is a lot of work, honestly, but it will not work without the screw. The screw's there to hold it there, so you need that. So this is a micro train, it's a screw. They're a little bit hard to work with, but it can be done. I'm going to finish this off camera. So with the couplers on, it looks much better. So I'm really happy with the way this turned out, especially for the windows. They came back nice and clear. Looks really cool. So now I'm going to put the shell back on. So this was a really fun and satisfying project. And now it's time to run some trains. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I certainly had fun making it for you. See you soon.